Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, or as I like to call them, Pokemon Sun and Moon 2 Electric Boogaloo. These were your typical Pokemon follow-up games, so to say, similar to what we saw in the past with games like Pokemon Emerald to Ruby and Sapphire, or like Black 2 and White 2 to the base Black and White games. The difference this time around though is although they are two separate games in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, they aren't exactly sequels like Black 2 and White 2 were, and they're much more like Pokemon Emerald version or Pokemon Platinum version in the past. This isn't exactly a bad thing, just something that I think is a little strange. The games are very similar to Sun and Moon with some minor differences, and admittedly more differences than games like Platinum or Emerald compared to their base versions, but not nearly enough to be considered a full sequel like Black 2 and White 2. Now that I think about it, it probably would have made more sense for me to make a video about the regular Sun and Moon games first before making a video about the Ultra Sun and Moon games, but when is my channel ever known to make sense? Like, come on now. So like every other main series Pokemon game, I picked up my copy of Pokemon Ultra Moon on release date, but unlike any other Pokemon game, I did not bother completing it right away after getting it. I actually had somebody else's completed save in order to do Wi-Fi battles and stuff like that on Ultra Moon, and only got around to playing Ultra Sun about a year ago. Although the title of this video will read something like I was wrong about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon or whatever, they are still without a doubt my least favorite Pokemon games in the entire series, which we'll get more into later. I don't think they're exactly bad games or anything, but definitely not a game I would look forward to replaying anytime soon, and definitely my least favorite Pokemon game by a pretty big margin. In terms of the story, it is very similar to the base Sun and Moon games with some minor differences of course. USUM still plays a big role in these games, acting as the main antagonist, leading one of the evil organizations in the game, the Aether Foundation. Aether, I hardly knew her. On top of that, not USUM, there's still Team Skull up to their usual antics, acting like a dumber version of Team Rocket, although admittedly I do actually like this team a lot, and the newly introduced Ultra Recon Squad. The Ultra Recon Squad was added to help with the whole wormhole and fusion elements and ultra elements to the Ultra Sun and Moon games, and although it seems like they weren't really too well liked, I have to say they're one of my favorite additions about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. At times they did feel like they were just tacked on randomly, sure, but the fact that they come from another universe makes them some of the more interesting Pokemon characters in my opinion. One thing that I was disappointed about though was that the fact that the trial captains remain largely the same. This would have been a great opportunity to maybe switch up a trial captain or two or change the order around even, like we saw with Platinum version and Emerald version in the past. But the only thing that changes in the trials were some of them having different Pokemon, which did make them a bit more difficult to be fair. I've always been much more of a fan of gyms over trials of Pokemon games anyway though, since gyms to me felt more important and it felt like they gave more of a sense of accomplishment versus these trials. The Elite Four remains the same as well, however this time the champion is changed from Professor Kukui to Hau. When I first played through Sun and Moon, I really didn't expect Professor Kukui to be the champion at all, which was a pretty nice surprise. Seeing this change to Hau was still very welcome to me and reminded me a lot of Pokemon Red and Blue where your rival is also the champion. The difficulty in general for battles in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is a bit tougher than I expected as well, and tougher than Sun and Moon even. I played through base Sun and Moon twice and only really had issues during Lana's trial, which did give me some trouble in Ultra Sun as well. I would say that this is one of the more challenging Pokemon games and definitely the most challenging Pokemon game on the 3DS due to the handful of difficult battles sprinkled out especially through the later portions of the game. One of these difficult battles, and probably the most famous battle in all of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, is your battle with Ultra Necrozma. This whole Ultra Necrozma storyline is exclusive to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and is arguably the most difficult story battle in all of Pokemon. It's one of those fights that I don't think I would be able to beat if I was just a little kid playing this game for the first time without going online for help. Ultra Necrozma has some very high base stats that even boots itself in battle and make it even harder. You have to be a little bit creative when battling it, and it is an essential event that ties together a lot of the story in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. We'll talk more about the story and how that ties in with the new Aether Foundation and other elements of the game after these quick messages. Hey there, do you enjoy the video so far? Then consider clicking that like button as it really does help the channel grow and it really does make a difference, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss on any future videos like this one. I also have a Twitter account and Instagram account linked in the description if you want to follow those as well, as well as a Discord server if you want to join and talk to me and other people that are subscribed to the channel. And now let's get back to the video. The Aether Foundation is one of the more interesting organizations or teams in Pokemon in my opinion, for better or for worse. I'll go more in depth with the Aether Foundation and their goals when I make that video about Sun and Moon, which I'm slowly more and more realizing as I write this video I definitely should have done Sun and Moon before this video, but now in the Ultra games, the Aether Foundation's motives and involvements are a bit different. The focus isn't as heavy on USUM this time, as instead of being only obsessed with the Ultra Beasts like she was in Sun and Moon and wanting to find them all, she's now more concerned with just Necrozma, which does fit more in line with the general story of the Ultra games. We unfortunately lost the battle from Base Sun and Moon where Lusamine basically turns into a goth hentai Ultra Beast monster, but at least with less of a focus on Lusamine, the games can now focus on other characters. That is definitely one complaint I have seen about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, however, is that how some characters have their storylines completely ripped apart or just dumbed down, while others are definitely enhanced. Sure, it is good for those enhanced characters, but it is a bit of a shame how some characters have to suffer so others could thrive. One of the characters with some notable changes, however, is Lusamine's daughter and fan favorite character of the Alola region, Lily. Lily's brother, and Lusamine's son of course, Gladian, is mostly the same from the base Sun and Moon games with some minor differences to make his story fit a bit better within the games, where Lily has changed a bit more than her brother. This time Lily actually battles, which is quite a surprise, when she assists you in the Aether Paradise. She seems a lot more confident and independent in general this time around, which I think is a positive change. It's definitely something that was also the case in base Sun and Moon where Lily became more dependent, but is a lot more apparent in this game. For Team Skull, they also remain pretty much unchanged throughout Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so we'll talk more about them in the Sun and Moon video. But this time we get a brand new group known as the Ultra Recon Squad. The Ultra Recon Squad is a bit different depending on the version that you're playing, with Dulce and Zacian being the main focus in Ultra Sun, and Fico and Solaria being the main focus in Ultra Moon. I think this is part of the reason why people tend to forget about these characters, and they even have different motives in each of the versions. Dulce and Zacian want to stop Necrozma from absorbing the light, whereas Solaria and Fico want to use Necrozma's powers for themselves. They do a good job facilitating the story behind Necrozma in general, as well as the Ultra Beast, and as someone who is a big fan of Ultra Beast, I have to say that the Ultra Recon Squad was my favorite part about these games. At first it seemed like they'd be evil and up to no good, but they do end up assisting you towards the end of the game. They end up giving you Poipole as well, a new Pokemon introduced in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which eventually evolves into the Ultra Beast Naganadel, and eventually let you borrow those Solgaleo or Lunala depending on the version, which they use to travel through wormholes so you can chase down Necrozma through one of these wormholes, who transformed into Dustmane's or Dawnwing's Necrozma depending on the version you're on. I could go a bit farther in detail about the whole Ultra Recon Squad and the characters involved in them in general, so maybe I'll make a separate video just for them, but I think they do a very good job at introducing the new Solgaleo and Lunala forms in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These forms are created when Necrozma fuses with either Solgaleo or Lunala, similar to what we saw in Black 2 and White 2 with Kyurem fusing with Reshiram or Zekrom. The scientist from Black 2 and White 2 who researched the Kyurem fusions, Colress, even appears in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which shows that they could be connected. Pokemon fusion in general is a concept that I'm really surprised hasn't been more explored more in the Pokemon world, so seeing it represented in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was very nice to see. That's about everything I want to discuss when it comes to the story and the main game of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but there is still some cool post-game elements and content in this game that I think is worth discussing that we didn't see in the base Sun and Moon games. First off is Team Rainbow Rocket. This was quite unexpected, but it was a very nice way to include some characters from past Pokemon games. Now, although Team Rainbow Rocket is largely just a throwback to older Pokemon characters, I've noticed that a lot of Pokemon fans aren't really happy when Game Freak tends to do stuff like that. A lot of times Game Freak looks at older generations, namely Generation 1, and throws a lot of nostalgia in there, which usually causes a lot of other Pokemon to be overshadowed. I think Team Rainbow Rocket does a good job at differentiating itself for something like that with Charizard and Sword and Shield, as instead of just focusing on one Pokemon, just focus on Generation 1, it focuses on the entire history of Pokemon, which I think adds a lot to the game. The other big form of post-game content in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are the wormholes leading to legendary Pokemon from previous generations which you can catch. This is sort of like what we saw in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, except this time it ties in with the Ultra Recon Squad story and allows you to catch some of the Ultra Beasts as well. There's a couple of new Ultra Beasts such as Poipole, which we talked about earlier, given to you by the Ultra Recon Squad, on top of Blacephalon and Stakataka. Overall, the amount of new Pokemon added in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon does create somewhat of a sub-step in the Generation 7 timeline, similar to what Megas being added in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did in the Generation 6 timeline, adding that sub-step, but not nearly as much, and there's far less new Pokemon in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon than in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. The last new Pokemon added is a new Lycanroc form, Lycanroc Dusk, which has a different appearance from the other two Lycanroc forms and a slightly different base set distribution than the Lycanroc Midday form. In the end, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are an improvement in terms of story and execution when compared to Sun and Moon, but they do still feel like they were rather unnecessary. I've seen some people complain that the story in general was dumbed down, while I'd argue the opposite, as although some instances of the stories like Lusamine's story is dumbed down, I think the overall story is definitely better. I personally think that's the best thing that Sun and Moon has going for it. A lot of the times you hear people talk about Pokemon games with the best story, and Generation 5 is usually thrown around in the conversation for best story, but I think Generation 7 is up there as well, although in terms of gameplay, Generation 7 is definitely one of the worst in my opinion. These games released only a year after Sun and Moon, and honestly I don't think they fixed the bigger problems I've had with those games. The routes are still very linear and straightforward in the Alola region, offering very little exploration and discoverability compared to older games, while the cutscenes are still far too long, unskippable, and appear way more than they should have to. I understand cutscenes are necessary to progress the game and explain to newer players how to play the game, but at times it felt a little ridiculous with how often they appeared. I would still recommend playing Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon over Sun and Moon, however, since it is slightly better, but if you've already played Sun and Moon in the past and you own those games, there really isn't much of a reason to get Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon as well, unless you are already a huge Pokemon fan like me and want to own as many main series games as you can, or if you enjoyed Sun and Moon so much that you want to see some more. I can see why people often joke about these games being $40 DLC to Sun and Moon, although to be fair, the way the extra content is handled is in a way where it is sprinkled throughout the entirety of the game from Sun and Moon, rather than just being added on the end like most DLC for story-based games are handled. I can definitely understand why they are largely well liked as well, from the memorable characters, the important battles, and the overall story behind the legendary Pokemon. I'll admit that I was wrong about these games and they are harder than I thought and definitely better than I thought, but for me the Alola region as a whole is the only region in Pokemon that I don't really look forward to revisiting one day.